Hello, everyone. Welcome to today's version of the Tariff Tea. It is an iced tea version, being that it's summertime. Um, we are having a little technical difficulties with Rennie, but I think he's trying to get on. And Val, if you can hear me, he's saying that it's not letting him come in. But so hopefully you can figure that out with Dominic to see where he's at, maybe via email in the background, and I'll get us started. Okay. So as everyone sips on their iced tea, let's take, as always, a quick pause just to review the fine print. Everything that we're covering today is meant to be informative. It's not advice. This is not legal guidance. And in a tariff and trade environment that changes by the week, your specific facts matter. So always validate decisions with your internal or external advisors. All right. So I'm Nunzio De Filippis. I'm the co-CEO of CargoTrans. Rennie, my colleague, should be joining us today. If not, the show must go on. But we are breaking down the hot headlines, or actually, we kind of changed it up, the cool headlines for the summer. We are also going to dive into what we call our insider brew. And today we'll be focusing on the latest executive order 14411, which is all around strengthening customs enforcement. If you have any Q&A, please just pop it in at any time throughout the webinar. We'll get to them at the end if we have time, and if not, we will always get back to you. So as we begin, here's the cool headlines. So by the way, again, kudos to the marketing team. Loved the iced tea. And starting off with really the Section 122 tariffs that will remain in effect while they're going through an appeals process, as we know. And, you know, what I've seen, or I've kind of read through the tea leaves, if you will, it seems like that from the latest court arguments that there might be leaning towards, keeping them in effect, meaning that it won't be a refundable like we saw with IEBA. Obviously, things could go either way. This is just kind of the sense of what we've seen from the last appeal. And to move on further, though, something to take a look at is our phase two, right? Cape phase two has been opened since June 29th. And these are for reconciliation entries only, ones that have not been filed, meaning where the recon has not been filed. You can go ahead now and start applying for your IEPA tariff refunds. There is not exactly a definite time of when phase three is coming, right? They said probably more towards the end of July. And their phase three is interesting because we all thought phase two would include those IEPA entries that were liquidated and past the 80 days. So that didn't happen. So now everyone believes that this will happen in phase three, which I think it's probably, the bucket that most importers are asking about right now, because there is a good chunk of entries that are sitting out there that are 80 days past liquidation. For everyone that's waiting, it looks like what's happening here is that, when customs can position themselves, they want to be able to push off some of these refunds. So is there going to be a phase four? Probably. What phase three actually looks like, it's still a little bit in limbo. And also, they're not sure in terms of, there are many importers that filed suit, right, in the CIT, and part of that suit that they filed was specifically to protect, their rights for those entries that are 80 days past liquidation. So in what's going on right now is that customs is basically saying, sure, maybe we'll open up Cape for it, but we're not even saying, they're saying they don't even have the authority to actually pay those back until the CIT actually sends them an order to do so. So we're still in a little bit of this kind of wait and see what phase three will look like, if it'll include those final liquidated entries, and if that's for everyone or only preserved for those that filed suit. Moving on, we saw very recently that we have declined to extend the USMCA from its current form, which basically means that we're triggering annual reviews, right? And so previously, we were reviewing the USMCA like every 16 years or so. And now what it looks like is that, like everything else, anything else that's happening in terms of like trade and tariffs, it's going to be kind of much more granular, right? So we're looking at the USMCA, and we might kind of carve out exceptions by categories or for certain importers. So I think everything is on the table, and so you're probably looking at much more discussions, much more reviews on an annual basis versus something that has been really set it and forget it. That's kind of been the model for a long, long time. We all know by now, we should all know that the CPSC has extended, it will begin their e-filings tomorrow, right? So we all should be prepared for this. I want to mention here that this isn't simply about replacing like a PDF certificate with an electronic one, right? The goal here, what I'm seeing, is that the CPSC and customs, they want the ability to really conduct a risk analysis before cargo is released, right? So kind of similar, like we've been accustomed to, like with FDA or USDA or other partner government agencies, right, that have been doing this for years. So in other words, I think compliance is moving from kind of show me if I ask, right? That's kind of what it's been in the past. If I ask you to show me, then you present as an importer. It's really moving towards prove it before I release your cargo, right? So this is what we need to be looking out for as these CPSC e-filings begin tomorrow. As I mentioned with the Section 122, good news is that this 10% expires, right? And on July 24th. So most of us on this call who are importers are happy to see us hopefully paying, a little bit less. And then we'll kind of discuss, though, what might be replacing, right, the 10% after July 24th. So something to be aware of, right? I like to always say where there's smoke, there's fire, right? And so we've seen oftentimes throughout the past year or so, this mention of this, I guess if you want to call it, this beef that we have with digital service taxes, right? I believe we need to be aware of the list of which countries are charging us a DST, right? Which is a lot of the EU countries, because we've been hearing, if you look back, the administration has constantly been bringing this up. And so obviously it's a point of contention, right? And where it's something we're not happy about, that our tech companies are getting charged this tax. And so I think we're looking to kind of equalize the playing field, but through tariffs, right? And so I'd say like one thing that we've learned over the past year, 18 months with this administration is that tariffs are really, they're being used as a tool to address issues that aren't, I should say, traditionally customs issues, right? And so this is kind of fitting where like we're using tariffs to broadly address any other things that might be of contention. And so DST, again, has come up quite a few times. It's probably only a few percent depending on which nation. I would recommend, if you're an importer, you want to kind of keep an eye. Is your trading partner, where you're sourcing from and where you're buying, are they charging us DSTs? If so, they might be on a list to receive a tariff. Now, 100% seems excessive, but that was the tweet, right? Or the Truth Social post that President Trump put up a few weeks ago. But he's put them on notice. Again, this isn't the first time that we've seen it, so we should be paying attention. 3.5 billion dollars have been approved for CBP to invest in technology and AI. That's that's a nice injection, right? And this isn't just like better technology. And in my opinion, this is going to be a force multiplier, right? Kind of like think of AI as giving like every customs import specialist that we've all dealt with in the past and auditors, that's going to give them much larger reach, right? So instead of reviewing before, right, an import specialist was reviewing kind of a small sample of entries, they can now really identify patterns across millions of data points and data sets and entries, and they're going to be able to kind of, I expect, a much more targeted enforcement, not just kind of random audits. So we'll also be looking at the EO 1441 kind of, I want to, in the strengthening customs enforcement in our spotlight, dive a little bit deeper there. All right, so from our cool brew to our insider brew. So, is Section 301 about to become the administration's primary tariff tool? Right. I think so. I think that's what we're leaning towards. As you can see from the picture here, Section 301, it's about unfair trade practices, right? Which is pretty broad, right? We've all said this when we've gotten into arguments as kids, right? Oh, that's not fair. So it's pretty broad to kind of claim things as unfair, but there is a process here with 301, right? It starts with an investigation, right? And that's where we've started. And then from there, it kind of leads into commentary period, right? So that's been complete with these Section 301 investigations, which have pretty much included over 60 trading partners. So it's a quite expansive list. We've gone through the investigation, we've gone through the comment period. Right now, between yesterday and today, as we speak, we're in what's called the hearings period. Right, that's kind of where we are today. So when this stage is complete, which can happen pretty quickly, we're kind of in the final steps, right? And this is really where then the USTR will make its recommendation based on the investigation, based on the comments, based on the hearings, in terms of where they believe that the tariffs should land. Now, 301, for anyone on this call importing from China, they're very familiar with 301s from Trump 1.0, right? That's where we had this kind of list of 25%, and then we've broken them down, into these lists of kind of like lesser percentages. So there, the way I see it is that most of us are kind of used to paying 25%. So I expect pretty kind of, ranging from anywhere up to 25% to probably less. I think we have already heard, right, Brazil kind of getting tossed that 25% number. I believe that as our 10% Section 122s come off, you'll quickly see this bridge of 301s coming back on, right? And you're probably landing somewhere between a 10%, since we've all been paying that, up to a 25. That's my kind of best crystal ball, that I see. That's kind of where I see it landing. And also you can kind of go back to some of those negotiations that were happening like during when IEEPA was active, right? When we heard India, for example, negotiate from a 50% down to an 18%. So could a 301 bring them back at an 18%? It's very likely. It's not, 301s aren't kind of countrywide where it can't be like all of India, but as we've seen in, with China, for example, the lists are extensive. It's probably covering 80% of the tariff book already. So you can paint a pretty wide brush, if you will, with the Section 301s, and that's kind of what we expect. Is a lot of those IEPAs that came off, they want to get those back on. So as quickly as they're been refunding, they are looking to kind of get that revenue back, right? So I do expect that's where it'll go. But so what we're advising clients, like, so okay, these 301s are potentially coming. We're waiting for the exact numbers, but the next steps of what you could be doing now is, number one, if you filed, hopefully most of you had already filed, if you a phase one or phase two claim with IEPA tariff refunds, you know, keep those aside, right? I wouldn't go kind of investing those too quickly. I think earmark some of those funds for these potential next tariffs that are coming down the pike. Model your sourcing scenarios. My suggestion would be based on IEPA, right? You kind of have an indication of what the tariffs were with IEPA turned on. Make that same assumption and model sourcing scenarios based on that. I would review your country exposure, right? Supply, where exactly you are sourcing from, to make sure that you've diversified as much as possible. And most importantly, start evaluating mitigation strategies, right? Start looking to ensure, like, are you paying duties on something that's non-dutiable? Like doing those audits, because think those are what we're seeing very often when we're doing audits with importers. There's a lot of tariffs being left on the table, right? Are you a potential candidate for first sale for export, right? A method that has been proven and used for decades. Is that something that you've looked at in the past, that you just decided maybe there wasn't an ROI for it, and so now might be the time to kind of relook at those things. Again, look at your Incoterms, make sure your non-dutiable charges are accurate. Do the work now to be prepared for dealing with the added cogs that are coming as we move into 301s getting turned on.
Yeah, Nunzio, before you continue, I just
Didn't
want
know you were there.
Yeah, it's okay. I just wanted to reiterate the importance of what you just said to the entire group regarding the 301 being a reality, right? And the focus of the government is to replace those IEPAs. So 301, along with the compliance complexities of making sure your values and your origins are accurate, and making sure that you have defensible measures against those forced labor connotations that are embedded in those investigations is very important.
Got it. Okay. So I'll insert you back into the conversation here as we go to the strategy spotlight. So, Rennie, as you may have seen in the previous round when the U.S. actually showed up, Balogun right here, as you can see, was given a red card. It was initially called a foul, right, on the field, right? Then, as we've all saw and learned, right, the ref walked over to the replay booth, and decided, oh, this is a red card offense, right, and elevated to a red card. I know that kind of the rules changed a little bit after that, but this is kind of the point that I want to draw for importers, is that your first look at your shipments may just get cleared right away. You have this immediate release, but then we have to pay attention to, there's going to be this second look where I think real compliance exposure starts showing up, right? And CBP, in my opinion, is getting better at this second look. And now as I just shared, with 3.5 billions being invested into technology, AI, targeting and enforcement, importers should expect more of this reviews, right? Not fewer. So, over here, I've kind of listed, I'm not going to go through them all, but I do share with everyone that customs brokers, we are about to start to get real annoying, right, to our customers, because we have to, with this new executive order that was released, kind of really start to dive deep into the import process and what's going on, right? So who's actually controlling like the import entity? Like who are the owners? We're gonna have to ask, not just like what's the tariff number, but like, what's the rationale, right? How did you get to this classification? And so, instead of waiting for customs to ask those questions, we think there's a bunch of things that importers should be doing right now, which is what we call playing offense or adding offense into your playbook. So, Rennie, if there's a bunch here that I listed, on the slide, but if you had one piece of advice for every importer listening today to avoid getting, that customs equivalent of a red card, what would it be? What should they, invest in the next few months in terms of adding offense to their playbook?
The demonstration of trade compliance, right, is not a one bullet point answer to your point, right? But for years, importers have simply answered the question, yes. I have a trade compliance program. That yes is not sufficient any longer. So, in addition to implementing true and accurate internal written procedures to defend value, classification, and origin, I mean, that would be my first, effort to make sure that we can walk the walk as an importer because contrary to popular belief, this escalation is not just for foreign importers of record. This escalation will include all importers. So don't sit back and be comfortable thinking that, oh, they specifically called out foreign importers, so I'm okay because I'm a resident importer. They are going to target every importer. They've just emphasized a pain point of foreign importers being embedded in what their target is for increased revenue using the escalation of trade compliance enforcement as that tool, in addition to just duties, fees, taxes, and tariffs.
Yeah. So yeah, one of the kind of offenses that I put on down here in terms of like how to add offense in your playbook is this HTS, classification governance, right? We've heard that for years, right? Classification gaps have existed, and how do you determine the correct? So in terms of governance and kind of like improving your maybe documented procedures with classification, like what's we only have a couple minutes here, but like how does an importer even like start that? Like what's acceptable? What puts them down the right path versus where, maybe they're just, not even close.
It starts with education and training. First of all, someone has to be able to prove that internally you have the expertise to understand what is the correct harmonized number. So that is a 1993 regulation that is being enforced for companies who failed to have someone that is knowledgeable, but doing a harmonized line review, making sure that the numbers that you are declaring are accurate using the assistance of your broker. That's fine, right? But, an article classification depends on a lot of things, right? What it is, what it's used for, what it's made of, and they are the unique identifiers that links you to additional tariffs, exempts you from some tariffs, links you to additional anti-dumping, countervailing duties, but not all inclusive. So customs has a zero tolerance for a company saying, this is the number I've always used. When I was hired, this was the number that was here. I didn't defend that, or I didn't determine that. But customs says for every entry filed, back to your point about brokers' due diligence and culpability, customs is not accepting the fact that this is how we've always done it. Matter of fact, they're interested in that because they can go back that far and expand the penalties to whatever time frame you introduce.
So if there's a gap right found and your answer is this is how I've always done it, you're actually opening up like customs to say, oh yeah, let's take a
Absolutely.
look at how you let's go back to see
Absolutely.
how
Yeah.
long you've been doing it that way.
Yep.
Got it. Makes sense. They did mention in the executive orders CT-PAT specifically, right? I believe.
Yep.
So, you know, why do you think they did that? Is this, or because that they did that, should we as an import community kind of really going back to looking at that again, right? Because I felt like CT-PAT obviously came out as a result of security post 9/11, and then is there, but kind of like lost its fizzle a bit, right? And so now they're documenting it again. Does that mean, hey, they're kind of giving you a hint, right, of like, here's an opportunity? Is that something that importers should be taking a serious look at?
Well, it all starts off the concept of who customs can trust, right, from a diligence standpoint. And CTPAT incorporated the trade compliance aspect in addition to supply chain security, right? So CTPAT, when you are a member, you are a trusted trader. So they are opening up the platform to remind importers, foreign and domestic importers, that if you are a stand up organization, not hiding behind a facade, then you should join the CTPAT program because that gives transparency to not only who you are, where you are, but how you operate. But for those companies who do not take that invitation, that means they're on another list called the non trusted trader. So Customs, I believe, has set up the process to invite those companies who are, again, transparent with their process, inclusive of supply chain security and compliance, to remind you not only to use a CTPAT broker, because most brokers are already CTPAT, but they've opened it up now to foreign importers of record, which wasn't here before, because Customs wants to see the transparency of organizations who are doing business internationally, acting as an importer, who can justify who they are beyond brick and mortar demonstrations.
Got it. Okay. Well, so it looks like to me, right, the era of, hey, broker, just clear my shipment is ending, right? And
Gone.
the new era is prove your compliance, right? And that's kind of like just the beginning, really.
Yep.
All right, all. Well, we are at time. I don't know, Val, did we have any quick Q&A? If not, if there's anything that's sitting, or else we can take it later.
We have one quick question if we have, 1 minute to answer, and it's CPSC is quite confusing. We know our product is not CPSC regulated, therefore, are we mandated to register on the CPSC portal?
Randy, you want to take that?
Yeah, so CPSC came out with some delusions of, inclusions, and it is complicated. But you're going to experience a lot of what we call false negatives, where customs is putting holds on shipments because of the appearance, and they're using text-based descriptions and the affirmation. It's always from a compliance enforcement side, which they are promoting. It's easier to put something on hold and then release it rather than to miss it. So I would, again, familiarize myself as an importer with CPSC. I would do the registration process to talk to my broker about how I could transfer information, even if it happens to be a negative declaration. At least put your process in place so that you're prepared for the negative declaration, as opposed to just taking the position, this doesn't have anything to do with me. Because there are a lot of Department of Agriculture holes that are in place that have nothing to do with Department of Agriculture, but it was pulled because of text-based AI information grabbing. So again, to be registered is, in our opinion, always the best.
Awesome. Well, thank you all for spending some time with us today. See you next month for another round of iced tea. And if we didn't get to your questions, we'll make sure that we get to them after today. Thank you all.